Discovering China's Jurchen Jin Dynasty. The Jin Dynasty, officially known as the Great Jin, was an imperial dynasty from China from 1115 until 1234, and not to be confused with the earlier Jin Dynasty that existed from the year 265 until 420, or the Later Jin of 936 to 947 during the 5 dynasties and the 10 kings ruled by the Wanyan clan of Jurchen descent. The dynasty is also known as the Jurchen Jin Dynasty, or simply the Jurchen, and at its peak the empire extended from Manchuria in the north to the Qinling-Huaihe Line in the south. The Jin dynasty emerged from the rebellion led by Wanyan Aguda against their rival, the Liao dynasty, with the Liao eventually being driven westwards, where they would re-emerge as the Western Liao. Once the Liao were defeated, the Jin then launched a century-long campaign against the Song dynasty that at that time ruled southern China. In 1211, the Mongols emerged as the greatest threat to the Jin. Led by Genghis Khan, the Mongols gained several victories over the Jin. The final 23 years of Jin rule were a time of defeats, internal revolts, defections and coups before they were finally defeated by the Mongols in 1234. The history and origins of the Jurchen people. The Jurchen were descendants of the Mohe people of today's northeast China. The Mohe were primarily hunters, pig farmers, and grew crops such as soybean, wheat, millet, and rice. Horses were rare in the region until they were introduced during the Tang dynasty. The Mohe exported reindeer products and may have used them as a means of transport before the introduction of horses. They used slaves to aid hunting and agricultural work and were described by the Tang as a fierce, uncultured people who used poisoned arrows. There were 2 main groups of Mohe, the Huishe Mohe in the north, named after the Huilong River, and in the south, the Sumo Mohe, named after the Songhua River. The Jurchen emerged from the northern group in the mountainous forested areas of eastern Manchuria and Russia's Primorsky Krai. The first recorded mention of the Jurchens was from the 10th century when they paid tribute to the Liao, later Tang and Song courts. They had no written script, calendar or office officials and were considered minor players within the politics of that time. By the 10th century, they were vassals to the Liao dynasty, as well as sending tribute and trade missions to the Song capital at Kaifeng. Jurchen were also believed to have paid tribute to the Goryeo, siding with them during the Khitan-Goryeo War. These instances of tribute were often made out of political necessity as well as for material benefits. By the 11th century, there was widespread discontent by the Jurchens against Khitan rule, as they felt they were being extorted by their Khitan rulers at the annual tribute levies. The Jurchens began seeking independence from the Khitans, with Chief Wugenai of the Wanyan clan rising to prominence as he dominated eastern Manchuria. Wugenai was described as being a great warrior, eater, drinker, and lover of women. It would be his grandson, Aguda, who eventually founded the Jin dynasty. Wanyan Aguda. Created by Wanyan Aguda in what are today the provinces of Jilin and Heilongjiang in 1115, the Jin dynasty took the name Jin, which means gold, as a name for their state. Aguda having adopted the term gold, which in itself was a translation of the Anchuhu River, which meant golden in the Jurchen language. This river is today known as the Alachuka and is a tributary of the Songhua River, located to the east of Harbin, the capital of Heilongjiang province. Having been ruled by the Khitan-led Liao dynasty in 1121, the Jurchens entered into an alliance with the Han-led Northern Song Dynasty and agreed to jointly invade Liao territory. While the armies of the Song faltered, the Jurchens succeeded in driving the Liao to Central Asia. In 1125 and the death of Aguda, the Jin broke its alliance with the Song and invaded the Song territory, which forced the emergence of the Southern Song to replace the Northern Song dynasty when they relocated the capital first to Kaifeng before fleeing to what is today Hangzhou. On the 9th of January 1127, the imperial palaces in Kaifeng were ransacked by the Jurchen, the emperor of the Northern Song, Shizong, and his father, who had earlier abdicated in panic over the invasion as Emperor Huizong, were captured. The newly formed Southern Song continued to fight the Jurchens for a further decade before a peace treaty was signed, the Treaty of Shaoxing, in 1141. Having conquered Kaifeng and occupying northern China, the Jin considered the Song dynasty had ended, and they became, in their eyes, the rightful rulers of China. Southern migration. After conquering northern China, the Jin became increasingly more Sinicized, and over a span of around 20 years, the Jurchen ruling class began a pattern of southward migration across northern China. Several Jurchens were granted land, and with the Jurchen-led ruling class leading an estimated population of 30 million people. Many ordinary Jurchens intermarried with Han Chinese, though the Jurchen nobility was forbidden from marrying outside their ethnicity until the year 1191. Emperor Taizong died in 1135, and each of the next three emperors were grandsons of Aguda, or to different sons of Wanyan Aguda. Emperor Shizong studied the classics and wrote poetry. He adopted Han Chinese culture while placing Jurchen nobles in the most prominent positions. Later in his life, Shizong became a different person, executing officials that criticized him and ordering Jurchen officials that opposed him to be murdered, even members of his own clan. In 1149, Shizong was himself murdered by a cabal of relatives and nobles, who then appointed his cousin, Wanyan Liang, as the next emperor. Rebellions in the north. The new emperor, Shizong, was not an improved decision. Known for his brutality in domestic and foreign affairs, he was posthumously demoted from his role as emperor. Upon his being appointed emperor, Wanyan Liang first embarked upon the role of legitimizing his role as emperor of China. In 1153, he moved the capital from Qinling prefecture to the south of today's city of Harbin to the former Liao capital of Yanjing, present-day Beijing. 4 years later, he ordered that the nobles' residences in Wening be destroyed. He also had the former Song capital of Bianjing, present-day Kaifeng, reconstructed after it had been destroyed in 1127, making the newly built city the Jin's southern capital. Wanyan Liang, in an attempt to suppress dissent, had 155 Jurchen princes executed before ordering an attack on the Southern Song dynasty in 1161 in an attempt to become the ruler of all of China. While conducting these campaigns in the south, two simultaneous rebellions erupted in Shangqing at the Jurchens' former base of their power, led by Wanyan Yong, a cousin of the emperor. Wanyan Liang had to withdraw his forces from southern China to quell the uprising. Those that remained in the south were easily outnumbered by the Song at the Battle of Saishe and the Battle of Tangdiao. Finally, Wanyan Liang was assassinated by his own generals in December 1161, largely due to these mismanaged affairs. His son and heir was also assassinated in the capital. Wanyan Yong was officially recognized as a new leader after the murder of his cousin to become Emperor Shizong. The second uprising that had occurred, instigated by the Khitans, was not suppressed until 1164. One punishment inflicted on the Khitans was the confiscation of their horses, leaving those former rebels to take up farming in order to survive. Because the Jin militarily had been severely weakened through the failed conquest against the southern Song, as well as the internal conflicts, Emperor Shizong began peace negotiations instead of war. The Treaty of Longqing was signed in 1164 and saw more than 40 years of peace between the two Chinese empires. In the early 1180s, Emperor Shizong introduced a restructuring of taxes to remove abuses and aid poorer Jurchens. Communal farming was encouraged. This resulted in a more prosperous empire with a large surplus of grain held in reserve. Shizong promoted the Jurchen language, the number of Chinese classics being translated into Jurchen, and the founding of the Imperial Jurchen Academy, with imperial examinations being offered in the Jurchen language. Shizong's reign was remembered as being one of prosperity and relative peace at the time of his death in 1189. The eventual fall of the Jurchen Jin Dynasty. From the early years of the 13th century, the Jin Dynasty felt the growing threat of the Mongols located to their north. Led by Genghis Khan, the Mongols first invaded the Western Liao in 1205, completely ravaging that empire 4 years later. In 1211, the attacks on the Jin began, and around 50,000 Mongol horsemen attacked and began absorbing Khitan and Jurchen rebels into their ranks. The Jin had a large army itself of around 150,000 cavalry, but soon abandoned the western capital of Datong. The following year, the eastern capital was looted before, in 1213, the central capital of Zhongdu, present-day Beijing, was attacked. In a humiliating retreat of 1214, the Jin clung on to their capital of Zhongdu, but that city was eventually abandoned that summer as Emperor Xuanzong moved the seat of government to the southern capital of Kaifeng. In 1216, for reasons unknown, the Jin attacked the Song dynasty, but were defeated in 1219 at the same location as Wanyan Liang had faced defeat in 1161. The Jin was at war on two fronts, two wars they could not afford to sustain. By this time, the Emperor Aizhong won a succession battle with his brother, ending the war with the southern Song, and made peace with the Tanguts in Western Liao, who were allied to the Mongols. There were numerous members of the Mongol armies that had defected from China, from the Western Liao, Khitans, as well as from the Jurchens. The Mongols had an entire army of defected Jin soldiers, another a former Song. These soldiers were known as the newly submitted army. Genghis Khan died in 1227 while at war with Western Liao and was succeeded by Ogadai Khan. Ogadai invaded the Jin in 1232 with assistance from the southern Song. The Jin tried resisting, but Emperor Aizhong fled south in 1233 to the city of Kaizhou, but the city was eventually surrounded by the Song Mongol army. Emperor Aizhong committed suicide to avoid capture, an act that brought to an end the Jurchen Jin Dynasty in 1234. The territory held by the Jin was due to be divided between the Mongols and the southern Song. However, territorial disputes between the two led to an eventual war between the two former allies over control of those lands. That brings us to the end of this video, highlighting an era of the expansion of a clan from northern China, only to be later replaced by another from further to the north. If you've enjoyed watching and it's shown you a little detail of life and events here in China, then your subscribing to my channel would mean a lot to me. Thank you for watching. Make sure you click on the link to the next video, and until the next time, goodbye for now.